Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mark's Backyard Birds. Today's topic are summer birds. I've done programs on common backyard birds, kind of visit your feeders, especially in winter, and lots of videos on different species profiles, like groups of birds or individual birds. But this program is kind of to introduce you if or help you familiarize you with birds that are in your backyard, should be in your backyard, or can be in your backyard in the summer months, because a lot of people, their feeding is mainly in the winter and when the weather is cold and harsh. But and whenever people decide to extend their feeding into the summer months, they often get a suite of birds they don't recognize. And that's really been illustrated this summer. I've got lots of pictures sent to me asking me about to identify birds. And so I thought what I would do is just do 10 or 12 summer backyard birds that you could, like I say, you can see and help you become more familiar with them. So that's the idea of today's program. And I'm going to start with a pretty common one. And a lot of you are already familiar with it. This is, of course, a Baltimore Oriole. This is a male. What a lot of people don't know about Baltimore Orioles is that they're related to the blackbirds, many of which you don't want at your feeders, like common grackle. But they are in that family of birds, but they're very, very pretty, and they are only here in the summer months. They're neotropic migrants. Spend the winters down, the Yucatan Peninsula, central Mexico's, northern South America, that area. And they come back here to nest, and they only nest once. They come into the area. We in our area in Kansas City, we say about tax day. They start scouting out nesting sites, and that's when they're most active at feeders. Now, if you have them nesting very close to you, like in your yard or very close to your yard, you can have them visiting your feeders all through the summer. Well, not until they leave. They're one of our earliest fall migrants. The males, adult males like this guy, will start to leave usually about mid-July. And the adult females leave after that, and the young will linger. The ones that hatch this year will linger a little bit longer. But that it's a bird you can't mistake. I mean, that fluorescent orange and black. And yes, juvenile birds and the females are not as bright, and there's varying degrees of black on the face and head and everything in those. But the adult males are striking and unmistakable. So next, I'm just going to talk about the wrens that are in your backyard. And I've got a program coming up on the whole wren family soon. But this is the house wren on the upper left, which is the summer backyard bird that I was going to talk about and am talking about, but I wanted to have the comparison shot because a lot of people confuse them with the Carolina wren, which is a year-round resident, and I covered in our common feeder birds video, and I'll put that link to that video in the description below so you can access that and look through those feeder birds that I covered a couple of years ago on a video. So, but the house wren is a migrant, and it is only here during the summer months. Now, if you live in extreme southern states, and especially southeastern the U.S., and the border states, you may have house wrens in the winter months sneaking around. But for most of us in the lower 48 and northern Canada or southern Canada, the house wrens are only here in the summer months, and they are just as plain a brown little bird. And yes, they do cock their tail up in the air. Both of them do, which is characteristic of the wrens. But house wrens are known for their songs. I mean, just absolute beautiful songsters. But they sneak around, and you can get them to a feeder sometimes. They'll maybe come in, especially when you have mealworms. Dried mealworms or live mealworms out, they might invade there, but they are masters at finding hidden bugs and crevices and wood and things like that. So both of them are the whole wren family. That's their specialty. That long, skinny bill, thin bill for reaching and prying up into wood crevices and pulling out insects. So the house wren, the one on the upper left, is the one that's here during the summer months. The Carolina wren is much of the eastern 2/3 of the U.S. now. It's here all year round. So that's the wren to be looking for. And then a couple of sparrows. We can in the winter months we can get lots of different sparrows, and of course I've done whole programs on winter sparrows. That's kind of my thing. And the upper left on the picture here is the chipping sparrow, and they're known by that nice bright whitish, maybe a little tinge of gray to it chest, but that reddish crown, rufous crown. I had a young man tell me at the nature center where I was working one time. He said it has a magenta colored crown. I said, okay, very good. And that black stripe to the eye. And then the bottom right, for more of the southern states, the northern states, are the song sparrow, one of the most prolific nesting sparrows in eastern U.S. and really actually all across the U.S. There's many different color forms of the song sparrows, and they got their name very aptly. They have a beautiful song, and they don't nest in very much of the southern U.S., but up in the northern part, they definitely do. So those are probably two of the most common sparrows that are here in the summer months. Now, this is a bird that gets a lot of questions about it, and I recently did a program on, I think I called it Catbirds and Friends. So this is a brown thrasher, and it is related to the northern mockingbird and the gray catbird, which is coming up soon. But this is a striking bird, and it catches a lot of people's attention. If you're new to bird watching, if you, like I said, if you only feed in winter and only attract birds and barely pay attention, then a lot of times you miss this bird because for the most part, now in recent years there's been more wintering further north, but for the most part, this bird is gone from much of the U.S. in the winter months. And the southern U.S., you can still find them. And now like I said, it's becoming more sightings in the winter months around here are becoming more common. But long tail, long bodied, long billed, but that striking yellow eye and those beautiful cinnamony color back. They are very secretive. This is a great capture of getting one out in the open like this because they tend to stay under bushes and in thick shrubby. They love to nest in thorny, shrubby environments. But the name Thrasher comes from their taking that bill and thrashing into the dirt to dig up insects or excavate insects and worms, things like that. So they thrash the ground. And they also thrash with their feet. They scratch the underbrush with the leaves and things. So brown thrasher, very apt nickname. And their songs, they imitate other birds. They're one of the mimic thrushes, and they imitate other birds' songs. But the thing about these guys is they repeat everything. As I jokingly say, they're doubly repetitive. So when they're singing their songs, they double them. Every time they repeat it. That they just constantly repeat. And that's one way you can identify a brown thrasher by that double song. So, and its cousin, the gray catbird, the catbird that a lot of people are familiar with. They're only here in our area in the summer months, and for a lot of us in the summer months. And again, another skulky bird that likes to sneak around in the brush and likes, brambly blackberry patches, things like that. But if this is a bird I've always said, and the thrasher's just like it. If you clear out all the underbrush in the woods around your house, you're not going to have catbirds or thrashers because that's the area that they like. And they are great beneficial birds. And of course, they do their meow sound, but they are also a mimic thrush, and they're actually very good mimics. They can imitate other birds' songs. So that black eye on that gray face, the black cap, it's a striking bird, and they will eat the jelly. The thrasher will eat the jelly as well. They'll whenever you put jelly out for your orioles, you might see these guys coming and taking advantage of that. But the great catbirds all summer, a bird you certainly should be familiarize yourself with for your backyard. Now, another one that's not very well known is the eastern phoebe. The eastern phoebe is a flycatcher, and they build nests regularly in urban areas. They are not a cavity nester, so they don't nest in boxes, but they'll build their nest on top of your box. I've had them build nest on the windowsills and under the eave, kind of like a robin. When you think how robins build their nest up on the ledge underneath the kind of a sheltered area, covered area, that's what phoebes do. And the phoebes say their name, Phoebe, real raspy. And one of the characteristics of identifying this bird is every time it lands, when it flies and forays out to catch a bug, insect, and flies back and lands on the limb, it pumps its tail like 3 times, up and down. That is it's almost a signal to a bird watcher saying, "Oh, I'm a Phoebe," and they're great little birds. Only here that now they do return pretty early. Sometimes we see them as late as early February here, but March is more common, and they a lot of times they like water, especially in the early time in the early spring. That's they hang around water because that's where the insects are hatching first. And but they will nest in your backyard. We had one for years that was built on top of an old Wren house that was on the side of a house where I used to live, and it would build on top of that old house, Wren house. So they're great birds, and you should again become familiar. If you know that song, it's pretty distinct. So now, two or three birds that are not as common later in the summer. They come in the early spring and they will eat your jelly and drink sugar water sometimes, and even eat citrus, eat your oranges and things. This is a summer tanager. And this is another bird that people get confused about because they're familiar. If it's a red bird, it's got to be a cardinal. So no, one of the nicknames for this bird for a lot of people is summer redbird. They'll call it that. It's that other red bird I've heard people ask me at times. Yes, it does not have the big thick bill of a cardinal, doesn't have the crest, doesn't have the black face. This bird's all red. Really, this is the male. The females are all yellow. But they are in your woods. You might hear them all summer. To me, they sound like a robin that has maybe a sore throat. They're kind of raspier than a robin, but kind of that sing-songy song. And what the characteristic sounds they make is their chicka 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 chicka. It's a call that they do, and it's very distinct. So the summer tanager is probably in the woods behind your house. We used to have them, the old house we lived in for 15 years. They nested in the woods behind the house, and it could hear them singing in there. Another bird we had in the woods back behind our house there, and I've heard them in this yard too this summer, is the great crested flycatcher. Beautiful lemon yellow belly, brown in the tail, the gray in the throat. Just a really great bird, and excellent at catching bees and wasps and lots of insects, and they are highly beneficial. And these guys are cavity nesters. Now they'll nest in an old bluebird house that the hole has been wallowed out, maybe by a woodpecker or a squirrel chewing on it, because their hole needs to be a bit bigger than a bluebird opening of 1.5 inches. And they're really great birds. You hear them go weep, weep. You hear them in the woods a lot, and they have a raspy call as well. So it's a fun bird, and you see them hawking around. And we call that aerial hawking, when a bird sits on a limb and then flies out, grabs an insect out of the air, and comes back and lands back on that perch again. It's called aerial hawking. So great crested flycatchers. If you watch your woods and listen for that sound, they're probably in and around your house. And another bird that everybody loves to see, and usually in the spring is better for them, is the Indigo Bunting. This is a male who's brilliant blue. And they come to your feeders a lot of times early in the spring, but we have people that have sightings of them at their feeders during the summer sometimes, and a lot of us dependent on food availability. But they will eat millet, they'll eat Niger, they'll eat sunflower chips, they'll eat black oil sunflower, but they're very much more common at your feeders in the springtime. This is another bird. If you learn their song, you will realize how common they are. They are very, very common birds around our area and around a lot of areas. And they like those open areas in the woodlands where maybe a big tree has fallen and created an opening in the canopy and sunlight gets there. You'll find them nesting in there, along the edges of fields and edges of prairies and things like that. So Indigo Bunting, a beautiful bird. A guy who worked for me years ago said their song is 3 triplicate notes. So if you learn their song, that tick, 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 you'll realize how common they are. And then one bird we get asked a ton of questions about in the summer is the barn swallow. And they love nesting under eaves of buildings or even in inside barns, of course, where their name comes from. They're considered one of the most beneficial birds in North America because of the pest insects that they eat. This is an adult feeding a baby here. But those sharp wings, to me, they're the masters of flight. I love watching barn swallows fly. And I see them all the time in urban areas. and we get them. They zip around very quickly, and we also get phone calls for people. They build those half cup nest up under the eave on their front porch even, and people don't like because the babies poop and it gets all over on the front porch. But they're well worth having in your area just to wash that off and let them go through their nesting process, because it doesn't last that long. And these are also famous for flying around behind you as you're mowing your grass, and they swoop down and get insects that are flushed by the mower, and you're kicking the grass. So highly beneficial bird, but not here in the winter months. This bird depends on flying insects, and in winter we don't have them. So that is a bird well worth it. And I have whole videos on suites of birds, groups are like all the swallows. I have a video on all that, and we have on the tanagers where the summer tanager is, and we have videos on the mimic thrushes where the thrasher. So to get more information, you can search for them, or I'll try to put links into the description below. It's a great program, great group of birds, and if you're just getting into it, they're well worth learning, and it give you a lifetime enjoyment watching them and knowing about them. So great idea for a program. Thank you for that. Give us a like, give us a share. If you're on YouTube, please subscribe. And until then, come by and let's talk birds.